The fusion category in Wuthering Waves is arguably the most enigmatic of the 6 playable elements based on the members in its roster. From Changli to Brant to Chisha, ever since they came out, it's been really hard to get a clean label and defined role for them, namely in terms of where they stand in the metagame. Perpetuating that ambiguity is the fact that they all play in very strange ways, unorthodox by the standards of other elements which have a more clear purpose or win condition. Not to mention fusion units finding ways to get indirectly stronger on multiple occasions. This has resulted in fusion being considered a jack-of-all-trades element roster-wise, with its units all being anywhere between decent and great, but lacking a definitive place in which they're truly dominant. With their second fusion character of version 2 being Lupa, we're gonna be finding out if she can take up the mantle and be the centerpiece of her proper niche for the fusion element. Is she going to be like Zani and Cardathea, who adhere to a singular playstyle but do it extremely well? Or is she something else? We'll be discussing Lupa's gameplay and moveset to analyze her rotations and playstyle, giving my thoughts on her expected performance in the metagame, as well as a primer on how to build her and what teammates are best on her. What makes the fusion category struggle to find any solid footing is how differently they play from other elements. Mortavi is the most straightforward of the cast, but for Changli and Brant for instance, they can do a lot of different things. Brant is a basic attacker who can also heal and shield the team, who can also buff the team's DPS, who can also quick swap, who can also be a main attacker or a secondary attacker. Figuratively and literally, he's all over the place. Changli can be a main attacker or a quick swapper or a secondary or a boss killer or an AoE attacker. She too is all over the place, in addition due to their uncharacteristic outro skills for DPS units being supportive ones. On that note, one of the biggest issues with Changli and Brant at the moment is that neither of them have a proper team who can make best use of them that doesn't want someone else more, with the exception of high-level mechanics on Changli, that is. For instance, Changli is a fusion skill damage unit, making her a fantastic recipient for Brant's outro skill, but Brant is not a good recipient of Changli's liberation damage boost. Another one being Brant's regenerative capabilities. They're passable enough for him to serve as your party's healer, but by design he can't really check off all the boxes of a sustain proper the way Shorekeeper and Verena can. That is why fusion's in a weird spot. Its characters can do specific things that, while good, can be somewhat tricky to optimize with the current roster we have. How does Lupa fix this, if she can even fix it at all? The good news is, she can assist in checking off those missing boxes for most if not all of the fusion roster. Contrary to her fiery and feral personality, Lupa's ironically not a main attacker, or rather she's in a similar line of work as Brant and Changli, where those two are damage dealers with supportive utility, while Lupa's a support with a non-negligible amount of damage. To start, let's check out her Resonance Liberation. After a blast of fusion damage, all party members gain a 35-second buff with 2 noteworthy effects. First being a 6% attack and 10% fusion damage buff when attacking boss and elite enemies. It specifically mentions only against them. But to be fair, when was the last time you needed help taking on mooks? When casting intro skills, the 6% attack will increase by the same amount for a total of 18% bonus attack to the entire party. Further, if all 3 party members are fusion, you also get another 10% bonus fusion damage, again only to bosses and elite enemies, altogether amounting to 18% bonus attack and 20% fusion damage with a 35-second duration, which matters more than you think. There's a third stat boost Lupa's buff gives, but I'll get to that when I discuss her inherent skills. The second party effect of her liberation is that up to thrice per cast, party members who get struck will trigger auto dodge, the self-same effect that Shorekeeper's outro skill gives you, which is always a nice bonus, especially if your rotation gets interrupted. Buffing aside, the actual purpose of Lupa's ultimate is to power herself up as well. If you manage to get the full strength of her party buff, she gets access to a stronger intro skill, encouraging liberal swapping to and from party members. Additionally, after casting her liberation, Lupa charges her Wolf Flame up to full, one of her 2 Forte resources, and can cast a new Resonance skill that uses up her Wolf Flame to deal heavy fusion damage. For 12 seconds after, she enters an empowered state called Burning Matchpoint, generating 500% more Wolf Flame through her normal attacks, which are responsible for augmenting the rest of her kit. Next we'll talk about her Forte circuit. Lupa has 2 resources, Wolf Faith and the aforementioned Wolf Flame. Wolf Flame has a capacity of 100 and can be built up through normal attacking skill and liberation usage. Wolf Faith has a capacity of 2 and can be built up when using empowered attacks made available by Wolf Flame. TLDR, you use Wolf Flame to get Wolf Faith, and then Wolf Faith lets her get her Big Bang attack. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Anyway, Lupa has 2 empowered Forte attacks both with the same name, but one is stronger than the other. To answer the Wolf is accessed by having 2 points of Wolf Faith, using it will then consume all stacks to blow up everything around her. Now, if you use to answer the Wolf while in Burning Matchpoint, her 12-second empowered state, she does even more damage, give or take about 40% more based on the modifiers. Then for 8 seconds after, even if you swap out, Lupa will stay on field, and whenever one of your other 2 party members activates their liberation, Lupa does an extra attack. As you can see from her party buff to her special intro skill to now her joint attack, Lupa's all about swapping between her and her party members. While on her, you go through your normal attacks to generate Wolf Flame to then generate Wolf Faith, and then get a big explosion before swapping out, pretty reminiscent of Brant and Changli's playstyles. Onto her skill, alongside generating Wolf Flame, Lupa throws a mark on a target, and then she can recast the skill to dash to them and do an extra attack. It's nearly identical to Carlotta's skill where it's an initial ranged attack followed by a gap closer. It's integral to use both parts of the skill to generate Wolf Flame, pretty simple otherwise. Then her normal attacks. As mentioned earlier, Lupa gets empowered attacks based on her Wolf Flame, which you then want to use to generate Wolf Faith. She gains modified heavy attacks and modified mid-air attacks, all of which are intended to get you to her final dance with the Wolf attack. I'll be sure to explain more about how to do that properly in her rotation section. Final aspect to discuss will be her inherent and intro and outro skills. Inherent skill 1 gives her a special basic attack after dashing for at least 2.5 seconds. I'm certain that's intended to portray her gaining momentum before pouncing on something, true to her being a wolf. Also, she gets interruption resistance when using her empower and heavy and mid-air attacks. Inherent skill 2 also has 2 parts. First, if Lupa kills a marked enemy, her skill cooldown resets, effectively letting you spam the crap out of her skill from one enemy to the next, as there is no limit to how often it can reset. So long as they die during the 8 seconds they get marked, you can reuse the skill over and over, subsequently giving her faster Wolf Flame generation. Second, if you recall during the Liberation section, I talked about how she can give a third buff. Here it is. Fusion damage dealt by your party ignores 3% of the target's fusion res per party member, 3% of 1, 6% of 2, but if you have a full team you gain an extra bonus. 15% fusion res ignore in total for a full fusion party, so even though Lupa doesn't make use of fusion burst, the fusion equivalent of erosion and frazzle, optimal use of her encourages a full fusion team. For her intro and outro skills, intro is your standard attack that brings her to mid-air attack 3 when normal attacking after. But her empowered intro, the one that you get from maxing out her liberation buff, clears the party buff gained by her liberation and has her deal an insane amount of fusion liberation damage. So it's kind of like Shorekeeper's ultimate where you want to end off your team's entire rotation by swapping back to Lupa and repeating the process. For her outro skill, it's the same 20-25% buff you see on most of the secondaries. While Brant augments skill damage and Changli augments liberation damage, Lupa augments basic attack damage. There's a very heavy implication on who Kuro expects you to play her with. Brant and Encore are both primarily basic damage dealers, Changli's primarily a skill damage dealer, and Lupa's primarily a liberation damage dealer. Therefore, outro skill wise, you want to go from Lupa to Encore/Brant to Changli back to Lupa. Okay, now that we're done with explaining our kit, let's discuss how to play her. As I'm sure you're all aware by now, Changli is a very quick swap intensive unit, so team rotations can be tricky to investigate. For the sake of simplicity though, I'll be focusing on what to do while on Lupa, since even though you can play her for quick swap, there's still her main rotation, so here it is. Open up with the skill 1 and skill 2, then go Liberation, then use a new skill from her Liberation to get to Burning Match Point. Mid-air attack 1, 2, and then the empowered mid-air attack 3, then follow up with an empowered heavy attack. By using her 2 empowered attacks, she'll get 2 points of Wolf Faith, so use your Forte empowered skill, dance with the Wolf Climax, and then swap out. For when to use her Echoe, be sure to use it after her Liberation since you want to capitalize on the bonus attack and Fusion Shred. Be sure to swap out to Brant or Encore so they can get the basic attack boost by the way. Throughout this time, you're able to swap to and from Changli to cast her skills if you'd like, as there's nothing in Lupa's kit save for her outro that goes away upon switching out. So to sum it up one more time, skill 1-2, Liberation, Echo active, Liberation skill, mid-air attack 1, 2, and 3, heavy attack, Forte skill, swap out to basic attack fusion party member. Obviously when she comes back, she'll be using her powered up intro skill, but the rotation is more or less the same. Overall, Lupa's a very simple unit to understand. It's more her teammates that make her difficult to play optimally by proxy. How good is she with all this though? Pretty solid I would say. For what she's trying to do, Lupa fills in a pretty meaningful gap in the fusion department for multiple units like Changli, Brant, and Encore, who were all strong even before her but not the most remarkable by any records. With Lupa though, you now have a strong mono fusion team that can compete very well in the metagame. However, it's important to mention that she's very much a team player. She's excellent if you have the right teammates to back her up, so her team section will be the most important part of the video. But before we get into that, sequences. S1 affords the Liberation better Concerto energy regen for more consistent swap-outs, 20% crit rate for 10 seconds, and she acquires super armor when using Dance of the Wolf Climax, a perfectly fine S1. S2 provides a stacking fusion damage bonus to Lupa's entire team for 30 seconds, 20% stacking up to 40 in total. A very solid support buff that, while not a huge increase to her personal DPS, no doubt can be taken full advantage of in a mono fusion, especially given the generous duration. S3 doubles the strength of her empowered intro skill, the one that already does a boatload of damage. In addition, Lupa's ultimate buff is now guaranteed to max out regardless of who is on your team, meaning you don't need a full fusion party, though it's still heavily recommended for other reasons. This also extends to her inherent skill. It's no longer a stacking effect, it's guaranteed full power. S4, Dance of the Wolf Climax, gains 120% bonus multiplier. Statistically, S4 is by far Lupa's best sequence in the realm of personal gain, as that's her finishing move. S5 appears to be the black sheep of every character it seems. Casting intro skill gives her 10 seconds of 15% bonus liberation damage. Yeah, only go for this if you're adamant about S6. Thankfully, S6 is phenomenal. Lupa's strongest attacks, her Forte empowered skill Liberation and empowered intro skill deal 30% partial true damage. Additionally, her skill at base charges up full Wolf Flame on one cast once per 20 seconds. Also, you can now use Dance of the Wolf Climax whether you are or aren't in Burning Match Point. And finally, casting her empowered intro skill still maintains the party buff just like Shorekeeper's A1. A quality of life heavy sequence with even some bonus damage to go along with it. Very strong sequence. But again, being S6, it better be. Given what Lupa is aiming to achieve, I would say for Dolphins you can aim for S2 or S3 if you want to go for sequences, especially if you don't have or don't want to run a full fusion team. But for those who do plan to run mono fusion, which again you should, base Lupa is perfectly fine. Instead, I would recommend pursuing her weapon, which I'll talk about when I get to it. Now the important stuff, teammates. If it wasn't glaringly obvious who to play Lupa with, full fusion. The more fusion you get on your team, the better. Example teams are Lupa Changli Brand, Lupa Encore Brand, or Lupa Changli Encore. For those asking if you can run something like a Lupa Shorekeeper Brand party, you can, but just know that Shorekeeper doesn't contribute that much damage on her own, which can be a downgrade from a proper secondary attacker like Changli even after factoring Shorekeeper's buffs. That being said, Lupa Shorekeeper Brand's combined DPS isn't too far off from Lupa Changli Brand, assuming you manage to pull off a double intro with Brand. Overall, team flexibility can definitely be more on the stringent side until we get more fusion characters, maybe Fusion Rover in the coming future. For the time being, Lupa, Changli, and then either Brand or Encore will be the best choice. Onto weapons. Being a broadblade user, Lupa's one of the more weapon-friendly characters in the game, but of course her personal weapon is too good to pass up, hence why I recommended R1 over S1 if you had to choose between the two. Wildfire Mark is able to give the entire team a 24% damage bonus, perfect for a supportive playstyle which Lupa specializes in. The other broadblades are all DPS based, not bad by any means mind you. You can easily substitute Aegis of Harvest, Verdant Summit, or Lustrous Razor. They're not that much worse than Wildfire. Also, just something funny you should know, Wildfire happens to be Calculator's best weapon too now. Yeah. Last but not least, Echoes. Like I covered in my 2.4 Echoes analysis, they weren't being subtle on who benefits from this Echo set the most. Flaming Clawprint. Ideal Echo set for a mono fusion team, and Linus of Glory is of course the main Echo of choice. Now if you are going a Shorekeeper team, you could also go Moonlit Clouds to supplement Shorekeeper's energy requirements, in that case, obviously Impermanent Terran. Otherwise, Lupa is your standard crit scaler. Get crit rate on 4 cost, fusion damage on 3 cost, or if you ever S2, you could substitute one 3 cost Echo for attack, and then attack on 1 cost. Energy requirements put her roughly around 125, so I would aim for that. Maybe a bit more for comfortability, like 130. Lupa lives and dies on her liberation, so the more easily you can acquire it, the better. For substats, go for crit, attack, and liberation damage in that order. In conclusion, Lupa is a perfectly fine character with a unique playstyle just like the 5 stars who came out before her, and though it can be challenging to build her if you don't already have her party members set up, it's by far one of the most engaging playstyles for sure. All 3 team members in a mono fusion party contribute meaningful DPS and have their own attack rotations, making this technically the first official triple carry team comp in the game. Be mindful though, compared to the average hyper carry team where you only practically need to invest time and energy into one character, for a triple carry team, naturally, all 3 party members' DPS matters in calculation for optimal performance, making it noticeably more costly in terms of equipment, echoes, and sequences. Despite that, again, the payoff is most certainly worth it, so if you're up to it, definitely give it a shot. That's gonna be it for today. Let me know your thoughts on Lupa in the comments down below, including if you plan to pull for her or not. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @VarsFarum, join my Discord server, and check out my other character first impressions videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.